So I've looked online at how to remove these headlights, and it's like impossible. For the 1990 Cadillac, they're just nowhere to be found. So I started with removing the battery, and the battery was a 13 millimeter. Let me turn this radio off, excuse me. Was a 13 millimeter ratchet socket, excuse me, on a extended ratchet. Pull the battery out. The battery posts here that hold it in are like an 8 millimeter. So just use one of these. 8 millimeter socket. Yeah, 8 millimeter socket. That disconnected the battery cables. That disconnected the hold down for the battery in the back. Battery comes out, battery gets removed. Now looking behind, it's kind of hard to see. Well, on the top you can see it really nice. So there's a threaded stud there, my fingertip, and one below there. That's what holds it in on the far side, the outer edge. So I went in from behind, took a 10 millimeter ratchet socket, and I got the bottom one off, no, the top one off. There's a clean hole. The bottom one, that bracket was in the way, so I had to use a 10 millimeter wrench. So now, once that was done, I unclipped the top of the metal shroud enough to pop that metal shroud off. And now the light's moving like crazy, but it's still pinned in from the inside. So I couldn't figure out where it was being held. And I got a flashlight. And lo and behold, there we are. 2 bolts right there. So I'm going to remove those bolts. They look like they're 10 millimeter bolts as well. I'm going to remove those, and then we'll see if the headlight comes out. Removing the 10 millimeter bolts, top and bottom, that hold on the light, but also go through the grill. There's another one there on that side. And then you have 6 little Torx screws. 2 in the middle, 2 on that side. And the Torx size is a T15. So, now with that done, just be able to just remove the grill. Now the grill is done, and if this is unnecessary, I'll explain it later, but now I can see what's going on. I can see that light totally just wobbling around in there. So I'm going to set this camera down. I'm going to see if I can finagle it. I already spun the light bulbs and removed both light bulbs, but there's still 2 little side marker fiber optic cables. I'll show you how to pull those out here in a minute. So it is really wedged in there, and my main problem was right here, this end, without breaking this little plastic piece, that little plastic piece. So it has to pop out this way and then slide out. And now you got your 2 LED cables, one here already removed and one here. If you can, there you go. Just be careful spinning a little bit, and all it is a fiber optic cable. So as long as you spin a little bit, pops right out. The light bulbs already spun and unplugged, and there you go. Assembly is out. You can see they're cracked, they're very chipped, and they're clean, believe it or not. Those are all microchips. And then the glass inside, the reflector inside, is actually black. Just looks like crap. So now we're going to try to install the new ones, and it'll be the same. The last thing I'm going to do before I put these bolts in or mount any hardware is just to push in the rubber gasket around the outside, and that's just so it looks flush. There's no real reason for it, but my old one is pushed in all around the outside, so I'm going to do the same thing in this. I'm going to shove all the rubber in and make sure everything looks good. Those holes there line up. Use those 2 10 millimeter bolts, and the other ones are in the back. So everything looks great, and now I'm going to bolt it back together. This light here is completely plugged in, and that's not plugged in, excuse me. It's completely installed. These can just come out. They don't bolt into the grill at all. So that light is installed. Don't over tighten them because it has a plastic nut in the back. The same thing with here. On one side you have that metal square, but it's just surrounded in plastic. If you over tighten the nut in the back, it's just going to crack that plastic. So last thing I need to do is put in the light bulbs and twist clockwise. And your outer bulb is your low beam, your inner bulb is your high beam. You want to, but there's two little holes down there with 10mm bolts that I had to remove, and I had to remove those bolts so I can remove the charcoal canister filter. And it's just one electronic plug and these two hoses. So it's a pain in the butt, but that had to be removed first. So now I should have enough room to move this out of my way, maybe even get it out of there completely, and have access to that hole that I can remove those bolts. I'll show you how these lights should look, how they remove from the socket. When they're in completely, they're up and down position. So they'll go in, turn to the left, push in, spin clockwise to the up and down position, and that's the way they're installed. So you'll stab them into the left, turn them right, click, and they'll click right in and lock in. If it's really hard to get in, you've got them in the wrong hole. You can see there's several little holes on top, and they only go in one way. So that's how you put in the headlights. And on the original headlight, this says right hand, which is the passenger side. So I know I did it right. I got the little side markers on, the running lights on, and now we're going to turn the headlights. That's about 300 times as bright as it was before. So now we'll take a little test drive here. I'll turn it on here in a second. That's even better.
Oh, it is on.
Yeah, man.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can see the ground.
Freaking ridiculous bright compared to how they were. Look at that shit. Before you couldn't even tell if the fucking lights were on.
Yeah. Now we can see.
Now we're going to take that same trip we did the other day around this corner where there's no street lamps. Windows fogging out. Look at that. That's freaking awesome.
Light.
And these are my low beams. Yes, my high beams are jacked up.
Thank you for fixing that.
That is ridiculous bright compared to how they were before.